Welcome to 10 Minutes on Topic here at Davis Media Access. I'm Autumn Labbe-Renault, and today we're talking about what everyone's calling the ARP funds, which actually stands for American Rescue Plan. It's legislation that was enacted in March of this year by President Biden, the Biden administration, and it includes funds that will be distributed to municipalities, including cities and the county here in Yolo County. Joining me today to talk about what's going to happen here in Davis are Davis's Vice Mayor, Lucas Frerichs, and Davis City Council Member, Will Arnold. And thank you both for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us, Autumn.
Sure. So first, let's talk about what ARP funding means to Davis. And then we'll get into how much Davis will receive and when the city will receive that money, and we'll move on from there.
Sure.
Well,
as you described, Autumn, this was this nearly $2 trillion federal coronavirus relief bill that included a lot of different things for folks: direct payments, those $1,400 checks, unemployment benefits, efforts to fight the pandemic, including vaccines, testing, things like that. But also critically for our community and others, it included $350 billion to help state and local and tribal governments, of which Davis is set to receive nearly $20 million in funds. Lucas,
that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right, for the city?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No doubt.
We hope.
I think it's unprecedented to get that much.
Yeah.
So Davis will receive about 20 million. And I'm aware there's a word that surfaced during this time, a tranche. Let's explain what that is. I know there are metrics tied to it, and then when that money will be coming to the city.
Yeah, well, I think so. I'm not sure it's an official term but it's really tranche is just some set amount and sort of and we're anticipating it coming in two different bunches from the federal government. So with the first half of the money has actually already been deposited to the city. So that's about, just about $10 million. And then additionally, we're expecting the second half of the money to come in sometime in the fiscal year in 2022 from the federal government. So that's sort of just where we stand. And the city council actually just we did approve some guiding principles around the usage of the ARP funds, and the county board of supervisors has done similar things. A lot of other jurisdictions are doing the same.
Sure. Now the two of you are, I don't know if it's fair to call you a subcommittee or a task force, but you've been kind of vested with the initial process to work through how this money will be spent. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so Lucas and I were identified and created a subcommittee. The council created the subcommittee of Lucas and me to work on first drafting these principles, guidelines that were passed by the council, and then, of course, moving forward in earnest and identifying potential projects or other items that would receive funds. With regard to the timing, I know Lucas talked about the tranches as a word that gets thrown around. Really, it's just that, half of the money is already available, half of it becomes available next spring, but there's a critical deadlines on the back end to funds need to be obligated by the end of 2023 or 2024, depending on the type of project, like a construction project. Gets more time, and they need to be completed by 2026. So this is not only money that we're funds for the city that we're getting that is an unprecedented one-time amount. It's also something that we need to be ready to go with what we're going to use those funds for. Key also to that is that some of it has already been allocated. A critical component of this funding for local entities like the city of Davis is to make up for lost revenue that happened during the pandemic. And we've identified an amount for that in the amount of $2.3 million, which was in our budget that we recently passed. And then very recently at I think our last city council meeting, we earmarked just over $1 million, $1.17 million to Crisis Now, which is an effort along with the county fledgling effort to bring more robust services for vulnerable folks in our community. And then along those same lines, about 700, almost 800,000 as a placeholder for other public safety efforts that we're doing. So some of the money's already been identified, or some of the recipients of the funds have already been identified.
Sure.
Yeah, and
sure.
I think okay, go ahead, Autumn.
No, please.
I was just going to say, I think, that's a good example of like, us, while we are still formulating a more of a plan of how to expend additional funds from this year's receivables from the federal government, as well as the coming year, there is going to be still a fair amount of public input process that is going to occur. And we're getting ready to sort of, engage in a public outreach process for members of the community to sort of provide input. And we've been receiving a lot of just unsolicited, input from organizations already and members of the community, but looking forward to this sort of upcoming next phase.
Sure. And that was actually my next question. I know the county has provided a couple of opportunities, public input meetings where people could come and voice support. And from an earlier conversation with you, Lucas, it sounds like the city is going to follow a similar suit. Do we know the dates of those yet, or is that still yet to be determined?
Almost.
So,
not. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Will.
Well, so as Lucas described, we've been working closely with folks in the community this whole time, stakeholders, our nonprofit partners, which I think is a critical piece of this, especially for this conversation. I mean, these are essential pieces of our community service infrastructure that really suffered and potentially still are suffering from the effects of the pandemic. And there's been other opportunities to make up for lost revenue and things like that, including grants and loans and things. But, I'm really talking about some of these brick and mortar nonprofits, DMA being one of them. There's others in town that have conversations have already been happening. As Lucas said, requests are coming in, and we plan to create a sort of a more formal submittal deadline for ideas. I think it's reasonable that that would be things that happen in 2021, and certainly the planning process will include I think the best idea is to have a recorded public input meeting where folks can talk, and then folks that weren't able to come to that meeting are able to watch the video and see some of the process as a piece of the public input process here.
Sure.
So I would imagine that's we're going to nail down a date in October, probably the second or third week of October for something like that.
Okay. And I'll help you publicize that. It's really been kind of crazy how many people have been coming to me to ask for information. What is the city doing about this process? What do you know? And that's really been coming through the Arts Alliance Davis channel with a lot of as I think you both know, the arts and culture sector has been hit pretty hard during this process. All right. Anything else we need to know? We're down to our last minute or so. I want to make sure that people know that cityofdavis.org. And when you go to the city's website, on the right-hand side, there's a link to the city council. They can contact city council members individually. They can send an email to all council members. That also goes to key city staff. And so there are ways to reach you. Anything else you'd like to tell us about the process? And I'd like to thank you both for taking the time to speak about it.
I would you're welcome. And I would just say really quickly, I mean, I think Will touched on this at the beginning, this is just such an unprecedented opportunity, but coming out of such a, unbelievable sort of societal event. And, considering that we've been in this now for getting on the better part of 2 years, we're very thankful that we have this ability to take some of these rescue plan funds and actually put them to good use right here in our community, because the needs are extremely real.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Vice Mayor Frerichs,
say that again.
Councilmember Arnold. I was going to say Vice Mayor Frerichs, Councilmember Arnold, just thank you for your time. And we're at the end of our 10 minutes on topic, talking about American Rescue Plan funding. Thanks for joining us.